Welcome. We are talking with Dr. Roger Hickman. He is head of musicology here at California State University, Long Beach, and we are discussing his wonderful book. It is called Real Music, Exploring 100 Years of Film Music. And Roger, now we are going to move into the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And film scoring changed.
Yes, it did. One of the angles I try to take with my book is that it did come from my study of humanities. I started with a humanities class. And so I wanted to look at film as an artwork that follows the same patterns and is subject to the same cycles as other art forms. And it absolutely worked, because it starts with the classic age, and then immediately following, and in fact right in the middle of the classic age comes that darn Citizen Kane, 1941, which all of a sudden that's not your standard classical score, and it's certainly not your standard classical film. And this started building an age till we really turned away from the classical concepts and the conventions and explored new ways of making films.
What changed in Citizen Kane musically?
It was a very dissonant score. If you listen to the opening of Citizen Kane, first of all, there's no music for the title. And that's almost scary, because it goes Citizen Kane, huge letters, and when you're expecting fanfares or something, and just total silence. And then all of a sudden you see the sign "No Trespassing," and you hear a couple string basses, and this very dissonant sound comes. No pretty melodies. Rosebud is my sled. You hear that coming out?
As you do,
And,
you
I
put words to.
Yeah. And you hear this 5-note theme, and then it's just so spooky, and it's just so anti the classical score. And most of that film has no score. It's not wall to wall. It doesn't use the romantic style, and mostly it's modern. It uses motifs, but it's not pretty melodies.
So from Citizen Kane, then what happened?
Well, then comes World War II, and so there's innovation stops for a while. So it's really after World War II and the film noir movement that we start exploring new musical sounds. And the directions they go are either popular music or more modern styles. And the popular music would be involved starting with jazz and the various types of jazz, but then that would go into country western and rock and roll. And that became, by the time we get to the 60s, that's the dominant type of film score, not the orchestral score anymore, but the pop sound.
Yes, not my favorite. So let's go back to jazz, shall we?
Jazz, we have a very good example, and this is an early example of where this is in Streetcar Named Desire. Alex North wrote this wonderful score. It takes place, the story, in New Orleans, so he wanted to give a jazz quality to the music. And so instead of a full symphony orchestra, we're going to hear a jazz ensemble, small jazz ensemble play. And it's going to be a jazz sound that comes out. Now, one of the drawbacks to using popular music is it's not flexible like romantic music. It can't twist and turn emotions as quickly. Let's see, put a piece of rock and roll on, for example. You're pretty much set with one mood until that song ends.
Gotcha.
You can either turn the song on or off, but you can't really shift moods. And here you sense that even in this piece, there's that jazz sound pervades, and it doesn't really interact with the story. It just sits in the background. This is a scene when Stella, the wife, has gone up, Stanley's wife, has gotten really mad at him and gets out of the house and runs away. But she doesn't run far enough. She runs upstairs. You know, if you're going to run away from your husband, try to get a cab or something. So she's upstairs, and he's feeling heartbroken that she left, and he's going to do his famous Stella, Stella. And just listen to the background. The jazz is slow. It's kind of cool jazz sound, and it's, one, very sexy. And we know she's going to relent that animal instinct and come back to her husband. And two, it suggests that it's inevitable. I mean, they're going to get back together. There's no way. So there's no even a sense that there's a doubt that Stella is going to go back to Stanley at the end.
I must hear that.
Okay, let's watch it.
Hey, Stella!
You put that howling down there and go to bed.
Joyce, I want my clothes down here.
You shut up. You're gonna get the law on
Hey,
you.
Stella!
You can't beat on a woman and then call her back because she ain't gonna come. You're gonna have a baby.
Listen,
I
Joyce.
hope they haul you in and turn a file
Joyce,
on you like they
I
done
want
the
my
last
clothes
time.
down here.
You stinker.
Hey, Stella! Hey, Stella! me, baby.
This is so fascinating because this score by Alex North. In an earlier segment, you played a clip from Gone with the Wind by Max Steiner with Vivian Leigh, who was also in Streetcar Named Desire, but in Gone with the Wind. And every changing emotion in the Max Steiner film score, you feel, and this song you could just lift right out on its own. It exists independently almost of the scene that's going on.
Yeah. Has its own life. It coexists with the movie. And so in this case, there's an overall mood, and that's one thing you can do as a composer, is create an overall mood for a scene rather than trying to reflect what the drama is doing in the scene.
Is there a term for that, for doing that, just mood creation?
Yeah, that's pretty much and it's often thought to be one of the main differences when we're doing large generalizations between European film and music and Hollywood, whereas the European will tend to be more mood in the background.
Yes, you're right, yes.
And Hollywood will be more, we're going to tell you how to feel and how this character's feeling every moment. And so, as Betty Davis has said, I'm going to just stand there and let Max Steiner do my acting for me, you know. So, yeah, this is a big change, and the pop, and again, it goes with popular music not having a lot of flexibility of mood changes.
Do you have a preference as to which kind of scoring you like?
Well, I just can't imagine Max Steiner doing this movie. I can't imagine what it would have sounded like to see with a Max Steiner score. So it really does. You've got to fit the sound to the right movie. And so this opens the door. The door is opening for all kinds of pop music. And by the time we get to theme songs in the '60s, or every movie has to have a theme song, it's all about attracting young teenagers and winning Oscars for best song.
Oh, yes, and we do. Oh, yes, I have some things I want to talk to you about that. I also want to cover one more theme that you tell me whether it's mood-inducing or whether it's more of a leitmotif. But To Kill a Mockingbird, Elmer Bernstein's. I think that was his favorite score that he wrote.
Oh, he said it's his very favorite, yes.
And I always think of Magnificent Seven with him, but To Kill a Mockingbird is so different from that score.
Elmer Bernstein is one of the great composers.
Oh, I'm glad to hear you say that.
I put him in my top 5.
What is it about him?
Well, what I appreciate is how flexible he is, that he doesn't have a style that you would always, I mean, Max Steiner, you pretty know what you're going to get. But with him, he could write jazz, he could write avant-garde music, he could mix them together really well. So he just was multifaceted.
So could Bernstein have scored Streetcar Named Desire?
I think so, but he'd be a little young. His first score comes out about 4 years later.
All right. Well, tell us, lead us into To Kill a Mockingbird.
Well, To Kill a Mockingbird, as I said, there's the 2 trends, and there's a trend towards modern music. Now, there's various types of modern music. Some of it is more disturbing than others. Psycho, for example, great example of disturbing modern music, totally modern score. To Kill a Mockingbird is a modern, but it may not be noticed by the audience. You know, so as you listen to it, I don't understand what's modern about it. Well, you'll have to take my word. There's some compositional techniques that are not the standard romantic style. What you can hear is its simplicity, as opposed to what we've heard in Max Steiner and the previous generation. At the beginning, there's just a simple piano, and not just a piano by itself, but a single hand melody. There's no accompaniment to it. And then there's a child's voice who sings. I think our clip starts right after that. The orchestra comes in and mimics the sound of a child singing. And you know how a child can sort of randomly sing. And so the flute sort of jumps around randomly. That's the modern style of it. And it's a very simple sound. You're not going to hear full symphony orchestra right away. There's a little squeeze box, accompanying accordion in the background, and the flute. And it all suggests childhood innocence. And of course, the whole movie is seen from the eyes of a child. And that's what's the beauty of that film.
All right, let's go to that.
Yes, let's do it. So there you have a great example of how much you do with little forces. And what we can't do, of course, is watch the whole film, and where you find it's not wall-to-wall scoring. It's just patches of music here and there, and it tends to be very simple scoring, like we just heard. Beautiful stuff.
Less is more.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and the whole film is about innocence.
Yeah.
The child and also the man on trial.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And the neighbor who's got special needs that people think is the boogeyman.
Boo Hadley.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But who's really a gentle heart.
Beautiful film, beautiful score. All right, now we're going to get into popular music.
Okay. 60s is the biggest decade for theme songs. And the advantage of a theme song is it attracts attention to your movie. And it's also can win an Oscar. And we know how important, even a nomination for an Oscar is something you sell. So the problem gets to be, where are you going to put the song? And if you can put in the opening credits, especially if it sort of gives you the energy of the movie, like the James Bond Goldfinger, you know, and then you can quote that song throughout, so that works. But sometimes it's a little awkward, so often you don't even hear the song to the closing credits, and sometimes that song has nothing to do with the movie. That always drives me nuts when it suddenly. Wait in the Dark, Henry Mancini was a fabulous score. Mancini at his most modern self, the quarter tone relationship, it's so scary, and that scary moment that scared the nation. There's a piano, he reaches his hand inside the piano, scrapes against the strings, and it's just fabulous. And they get the closing credits, boom, and you go, I can't get out of the theater fast enough. The mood is totally spoiled.
That sound, there was sort of a tinny sound to some of those scores in the 60s and early 70s.
Well, Mancini's a great songwriter, and I think his Moon River is justifiably one of the great songs and movies. It's sung by an actress, so it's introduced in a proper way. It's not some voice in the sky. It's someone who's a character. And the drama's furthered because it attracts the attention of the upstairs neighbor, and they're going to fall in love, and that'll become their leitmotif for their love affair, love relationship. And then at the end, when the full chorus comes in, you finally understand the meaning of the words. It all makes perfect sense.
And by the way, those words beautifully written by Johnny Mercer, which helped the song quite a bit.
Yes, and on the other side, I